Thank you for listening to the Golden State Media Concepts basketball podcast, where we discuss all the news in the world of basketball, NBA, college, high school even. We're here back in the studio Wednesday morning. Another action-packed show for you today, talking a lot of basketball. We got a lot of NBA stuff to talk about. We got some news. Kevin Love is eyeing a return back to the Cleveland Cavaliers roster. He's going to be on their next road trip. Talk about what that means for Cleveland and when exactly he might be back there. Also, we had the first four last night. We have a continuation tonight. Kansas State versus Wake Forest. And the other matchup was Mount St. Mary's against New Orleans. So we'll talk about those games, talk about the games tonight from North Carolina Central and UC Davis and Providence and USC, as well as a little preview for Thursday and Friday, what we're going to look for, games I'm really excited about. So first of all, we're going to talk about the games in the NBA from last night. A lot of good storylines from last night, and then preview some games tonight. The Golden State Warriors were at home facing the Philadelphia 76ers last night, and the Warriors have really been struggling recently, and they did get the win last night, 106-104 over Philly, but they struggled yet again. Steph Curry had 29 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 steals, but he shot 8 of 23, 5 of 13 from 3. Steph is really struggling from behind the arc right now with his shot just really not going in. I mean, the most impressive player last night for me was definitely Draymond Green. He really filled up the box score last night. 20 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, 6 blocks, and 4 steals. Dario Saric led the way for Philly. He had 25 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists. Another good big man. Jahlil Okafor had 22 points and 6 rebounds as well. So the Sixers, with the loss, they go to 24-43. And the Warriors win their 27th game at home this season. They're 53-14. I feel like the Warriors don't really have any need to panic right now. They're still tied for first in the West. And, well, I mean, they're half a game up on the Spurs. And they still have more home games the remaining part of the season than any other team in the NBA. So even without KD, I think the Warriors should be able to get the number 1 seed over the Spurs. But they're really struggling right now. They got to kind of shake off the cobwebs because they lost a lot of depth when they acquired Kevin Durant. They don't have that depth anymore. And Steph Curry is really shooting the ball poor right now. Anyways, back into the NBA, the Oklahoma City Thunder win 122-104 over the Brooklyn Nets on the road. Russell Westbrook, yet again, a triple-double, 25 points, 19 assists for Russ, and 12 rebounds. He shot only 6 of 18 from the field and 2 of 7 from 3 last night. Victor Oladipo also chipped in with 21 points. Brook Lopez for the Nets had 25 points as well as 6 rebounds. He shot 9 of 15 and 3 of 6 from 3. So good night from the big men. The win gives the Oklahoma City Thunder their 38th of the season. They're 13-20 on the road though. So kind of struggling away from the Chesapeake Energy Arena, but nevertheless a good solid performance for Russell Westbrook, his 33rd triple-double of the season. He now has 70 in his NBA career. Only 5 players have eclipsed that mark, Russell Westbrook being one of them, so young into his prime. So Russell Westbrook has a really good chance of finishing out the season with a triple-double average. He'd be the second player only ever to do that behind Oscar Robertson. Hard to not give him the MVP if he does eclipse that mark. The Cleveland Cavaliers win big over the Detroit Pistons last night, 128-96. LeBron James had himself a triple-double as well, although not necessarily as, I guess you'd say, flashy as Russell Westbrook's. He only had 16 points to go along with 12 assists and 11 rebounds. He shot 6 of 12 from the field. He did shoot 0 of 2 from 3, so he didn't make a three-pointer, but he played really well. Kyrie Irving as well, 26 points to go along with 6 assists. Shot great. He made all 4 of his three-pointers. When you look at the Detroit Pistons side, Tobias Harris was their top performer. He had 17 points. And then you have Andre Drummond, 8 points, but 14 big rebounds there. So Cavaliers getting a win last night, which is good because they have really been playing poor as well. And they're getting some help because Kevin Love is scheduled to appear on their next road trip. We'll talk about that at the end of the show, though. Moving on here, the last game we're going to look at really in depth from last night was the Portland Trail Blazers on the road taking on the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans actually, for once, played really, really well. 100-77, the Pelicans do win over the Trailblazers. DeMarcus Cousins had 22 points and 9 rebounds. Anthony Davis, 15 points and 15 rebounds there for the Pelicans. A good, solid win there. Damian Lillard in the loss did have 29 points, and C.J. McCollum chipped in with 8. So the backcourt kind of struggling there. Shabazz Napier was their top performer off the bench. He had 10 points to go along with 3 assists. So a good win here for the New Orleans Pelicans, something they have not been doing too much of since they made the trade to acquire DeMarcus Cousins. But it was a really, really good, solid win for them. Some other games in the NBA from last night. We did have one more on the schedule. We had the Pacers in MSG to take on the New York Knicks, and the Knicks did get the win last night, 87-81. Carmelo Anthony had 22 points, 13 rebounds in the game. Miles Turner in the loss for Indiana had 17 points and 12 rebounds. The win for the Knicks gives them their 27th of the season to go along with 41 losses, and the Pacers dropped to 34-33. Although the Knicks did get the win, they did get a little bit of bad news because big man Kristaps Porzingis was forced to leave the game against the Pacers with a left thigh contusion. He left it after he collided in the victory last night in the second half, and he did not return. So he collided with Monte Ellis from Indiana, and he said at the moment he didn't believe it was serious. So he did have to get helped off the floor, though, by a teammate and a Knicks trainer. So it would be a big loss for the Knicks. Porzingis is averaging 18 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 blocks. And they are really, really out of the playoff race. Obviously, they're not going to be there. You would imagine maybe if this is something that could be a couple-week-long injury, they might just shut down Porzingis for good because they're just playing really for lottery balls. You saw the Lakers do that with Timofey Mozgov and Luol Deng. They announced that they are shutting both of them down for the rest of the season. And that really comes down to just simply playing for lottery balls because obviously the future for both these teams is not this year. It's the years after that. This is going to be one of the deepest drafts we have seen in the last decade. So every team is kind of like deciding now it's time to tank for the rest of the year because we want to get the best draft pick we can to get some of these top guys. Markelle Fultz, Lonzo Ball, Josh Jackson. It's a very, very deep draft. So everyone's kind of just shutting everyone down, getting ready for the NBA draft this summer. And you would imagine if this contusion with Porzingis is going to be something that might be a couple-week long injury, I would imagine they would do the same thing. But we'll have to wait and see. But the Unicorn did leave the game last night after he collided with Monte Ellis with a left thigh contusion. In the NBA tonight, we do have the Dallas Mavericks in Washington to take on the Washington Wizards. Very important game there for the Wizards trying to get that second seed, even try to get the first seed. I realize they're a couple games back of Cleveland, but it's still there up for grabs. And the Mavericks are trying to get that 8th seed. So a good game here. Should be a good game. Both teams do need the victory and are going to be trying to get the victory. The Hornets will be in Indiana to take on the Indiana Pacers. The T-Wolves will be in Boston to take on Isaiah Thomas and the rest of the Boston Celtics. The Pelicans will be in Miami to take on Hassan Whiteside and the Miami Heat. The Jazz will be in the Motor City to take on the Detroit Pistons. The Grizzlies will go to Chicago to take on the Bulls. The Lakers will be in Houston taking on James Harden and the rest of the Houston Rockets. Kawhi Leonard and the Spurs will be hosting the Portland Trailblazers. The Kings will be in the Valley of the Sun to take on the Phoenix Suns. And the Milwaukee Bucks will be in LA to take on the Los Angeles Clippers. Those are your games tonight in the NBA. We are going to take our first break of the show now. After the break, we're going to talk about the first 4 college NCAA basketball tournament games from last night. Mount St. Mary's and New Orleans in the 16 versus 16 matchup. Then we had Kansas State versus Wake Forest in the 11-11 matchup. And then we'll look to tonight. We do have North Carolina Central against UC Davis, and we do have Providence against USC. Also, we're going to look at Thursday's games and Friday's games a little in depth because I do want to look at some of the matchups I'm really, really looking forward to in the NCAA tournament from the first round. So we'll take our first break of the show. After the break, we'll get into some college basketball news here at the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Thank you for turning back to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. We're talking college basketball, and it doesn't get any more exciting than the NCAA tournament officially getting tipped off last night in the first four. We had 2 games last night. We'll have 2 more tonight. Last night, the number 16 seed was up for grabs in the East region between Mount St. Mary's and New Orleans. And the Mountaineers from Mount St. Mary's come out on top by 67-66 over New Orleans. They got 23 points and 3 assists from all 5 of Junior Robinson. The point guard played every single minute of the game. Mount St. Mary's is not deep at all. They only played 7 guys last night in total. One of them played 1 minute. So they really only rotated 6 guys last night. Their backcourt played all 40 minutes. I mean, absolutely fabulous performance from Junior Robinson in particular for Mount St. Mary's. So now they will go on to play tomorrow against the number 1 seed in the whole entire NCAA tournament in the East region. That is Villanova. In the South region, the number 11 seed was up for grabs between Kansas State of the Big 12 and Wake Forest of the ACC. And Kansas State came out on top 95-88 over Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Wesley Iwundu had 24 points, 7 assists, and 6 rebounds in the victory for K-State. And in the loss, John Collins had a great game for Wake Forest. He had 26 points to go along with 9 rebounds. So Kansas State now move on with their 21-13 record to play Friday. Usually the teams that play Tuesday play Thursday, but they're going to be playing Friday because they're going to have to travel all the way here to Sacramento because they'll be taking on number 6 Cincinnati on Friday here from the Golden One Center. So Kansas State move on, and then we have a couple of games tonight. We have the number 16 seed up for grabs in the Midwest between North Carolina Central and UC Davis, local team here from Davis, California. They will be playing tonight. The winner will take on the number 1 seed in the Midwest region, which is Kansas. And then we have number 11 USC taking on number 11 Providence tonight. Remember that ever since the NCAA has adopted the whole first 4, I guess you can say, elements, so they added 4 teams. They have these first 4 games here. Ever since they have added that, an 11 seed has gone on to win that has been in the first 4. So whether it be Kansas State or tonight you have USC or Providence, history has shown us that one of these teams is going to go on and beat the number 6 seed in the first round of the NCAA tournament. It's happened every single year. Could it not happen this year? Of course it can. This is the NCAA tournament. You literally cannot predict anything. But maybe you want to fill out your bracket that way because one of these teams has gone on. So whether you might want to pick USC or Providence to winner or pick Kansas State, it's up to you, but just some last-minute bracket advice there. And then real quick before I talk a little bit about what I'm looking forward to on Thursday, I kind of hate how we have the number 16 seed up for grabs as far as teams who automatically qualified for by winning their conference championship, automatically qualified for the NCAA tournament because they did their job. They did what they were supposed to. They won their conference title. Why should they have to play another game to get into the official NCAA tournament? I mean, I realize it's like, hey, you won against UC Davis, North Carolina Central, you get to take on Kansas. Or like Mount St. Mary's, congratulations, you won. Now you get to take on Villanova. But it's like they automatically got in. Like, shouldn't they be rewarded for that? I mean, I feel like that would be better and more deserving. Like, I can understand the play-in games for the 11 seeds because these are the at-large teams, the teams that are like on the bubble, the last four in, like USC and Providence and Kansas State and Wake Forest. Like, I can understand them having to play in to get in. But the teams that automatically won their conference tournament, I don't think they should have to necessarily play in to get in. Although it is against a 1 seed. We've never seen a number 16 seed beat a 1 seed. We've gotten close a few times. I know that we had a 1-point victory once. I forget what school it was. They pushed Michigan State into overtime before. So it's been really, really close. And it's going to happen eventually. But I would love to see them just automatically get in. We have had 8 number 15 seeds defeat the 2 seed. As recently as last year when Middle Tennessee State defeated number 2 Michigan State and really broke my bracket because last year I had the Spartans winning it all. And they were out before you even knew it. So, I mean, that's the greatness of the college basketball tournament. So now let's look at Thursday. Obviously, we'll not be here tomorrow to preview some of these games. So I want to take a look ahead and talk about them here for you today. I'm definitely really, really excited. The NCAA tournament is always fantastic, and it's always something that I look forward to and try to, watch as much as I can and really get up to date with as much as I can. So I'll be definitely tuning in tomorrow while I'm at school, so don't tell anyone. But so let's look at tomorrow. We have number 12 Princeton taking on number 5 Notre Dame. The winners of the Ivy League are Princeton. Stephen Cook, definitely one of their best players, taking on Notre Dame and Bonzie Colson, and it's definitely going to be a good matchup. Notre Dame was one of the best teams in the ACC this year, 25-9. They got to the ACC tournament final against Duke, although they lost on Saturday. So I'm going to take Notre Dame in this game. I really do think that, the 12-5 is always tough to predict, and that's where you see a lot of the upsets. But I'm going to take Notre Dame in this game. Princeton, a good team, really solid, really fundamentally sound. But I feel like Notre Dame are really one of the best 5 seeds we've seen in a while. And I think they will definitely get through over Princeton. And we have another 5 seed that comes out of the ACC, and that's Virginia taking on UNC Wilmington. Virginia, led by London Prentice. I feel like he's been there forever. And with how much defense they play, I do expect Virginia to get through. They struggled a little bit during the season near the end of it there. But they kind of found their way a little bit in the ACC tournament, got a little farther. So I'll take Virginia because the tournament is when games really slow down, guard play kind of takes over, and your defense really steps up and shines. And that's what Virginia have. London Prentice, a good guard, and they have a good defense under Tony Bennett. So I'll take the Virginia Cavaliers to defeat UNC Wilmington. Here's where I do have my first upset. And you got to pick them. I mean, they're literally impossible to predict. You kind of just have to pick them and kind of pray that it works out. So for me, I'm taking number 13 Winthrop over number 4 Butler. Butler, definitely a really, really good school now in the Big East. They did give Villanova 2 of their 3 losses this year. So Butler can win against anyone in the entire country, and they're a really good 4 seed. But Winthrop are one of those really, really consistent mid-major schools that seem to always really put out good performances and get into the tournament. Winthrop are led by Keon Johnson, the guards averaging almost 23 points a game. In the tournament, you need to have those key big-time playmaking guards to really get it done for you and to really propel you into the tournament. And Winthrop have that with Keon Johnson. He could be a guy that could simply just maybe take over the game a little bit and really get Winthrop going. So that's why I'm going to go with Winthrop. I feel like they can definitely get it done. A 13 being a 4 has happened before, so it's not like it's not doable. It's very doable. So I'm going to go with Winthrop. I just kind of like them. Number 1, Gonzaga taking on South Dakota State. I've not been the biggest fan of Gonzaga, but I don't think they should have any trouble taking on South Dakota State, the winners of the Summit League, at 18-16. Number 13, Bucknell will take on number 4, West Virginia. I really like West Virginia to go far in this tournament. I like them to get to the Sweet 16, and even farther, I think they will beat number 1 Gonzaga. So I have them in the Elite 8. So I am, of course, taking West Virginia over Bucknell. Bucknell, another one of these really, really good mid-major schools, led by Zach Thomas, averaging 16 points and about 6 rebounds. Number 4, Florida will take on number 13, East Tennessee State. Kevon Allen in Florida should be able to handle East Tennessee State in my eyes. Really good mid-major, had a great year for East Tennessee State, but they're taking on number 4, Florida. Definitely a tough matchup. Here's where I have another one of my upsets, and that's number 12, Middle Tennessee State, taking on number 5, Minnesota. Number 5, Minnesota, of course, coached by Rick Pitino's son, and Minnesota had a good year this year in the Big Ten. But Middle Tennessee State is definitely, I guess you can say, the best of the mid-majors this year, and they got a 12 seed, and quite honestly, they could have gotten an 8 or 9 seed. They're really, really good. Ja'Cory Williams and company are really, really good. The Blue Raiders, remember last year, they did upset number 2, Michigan State, as I mentioned, as a 15 seed. They do a lot of pick and roll, high ball screens, a lot of good shooting from the perimeter. And at 30-4, they are very, very dangerous. So I have them beating number 5, Minnesota. And I have them going to the Sweet 16 because I had them against number 13, Winthrop, because I had Winthrop beating Butler. But even if Middle Tennessee State do win and take on number 4, Butler, that is a matchup that I think Middle Tennessee State could still win. I mean, they're a really, really solid team. They have the experience and what it takes to win in the tournament, having won there last year. And they're going to be definitely a tough out for Minnesota. Number 9, Vanderbilt will take on number 8, Northwestern. I like Northwestern in this game simply because it's their first ever time in the NCAA tournament. Their emotions are going to be riding high about finally getting in, and I think that's going to propel them over number 9, Vanderbilt. It should be a good matchup, though. Number 11, Xavier will take on number 6, Maryland. It'll be a great matchup as well. The 11 and 6s seem to be really, really common with the upsets. 11 and 6s are really, really close in comparison. Maryland, led by Melo Trimble, of course. I think he will get it done. Like I said, the guard play really, really succeeds in the tournament, and he's one of the best in the Big Ten. The sophomore guard is averaging 17 points, about 4 rebounds, about 4 assists. So I think I'll take number 6, Maryland. And I even have them going into the Sweet 16. I think they will beat number 3. Who's number 3 in that? Oh, yeah, Florida State. They'll be playing later that night against Florida Gulf Coast. Number 4, Purdue is taking on number 13, Vermont. Number 10, VCU taking on number 7, St. Mary's. I do like VCU in this game coming out of the A-10. They don't have Shaka Smart anymore, and that's a big loss because he's one of the best coaches, especially come tournament time. But they do have Jaquan Lewis, and the guard is really, really good. I think they will take out number 7, St. Mary's. I feel like St. Mary's, good season, 28-4. But the WCC, it was really St. Mary's and Gonzaga, and St. Mary's had 3 of their 4 losses to Gonzaga. So I think that's going to be tough to overcome. And then you have number 8, Wisconsin, taking on number 9, Virginia Tech. I'll take Wisconsin in this game. Got like the experience of Bronson Koenig, obviously well coached as well. Number 2, Arizona, I have them going to the Final Four, so I don't think they should have any trouble against number 15, North Dakota. And then you have number 12, Nevada, and number 5, Iowa State. Nevada, definitely a trendy pick led by Marcus Marshall to overtake number 5, Iowa State here. Eric Musselman, a good coach, former NBA coach with the Kings, so he's got good experience there. I mentioned Marcus Marshall. He's averaging about 20 points. But I think Monte Morris and company from the Iowa State will be able to overcome this number 12 Nevada team that had a great season at 28-6. I actually like Iowa State to get into the Sweet 16. I think they can really get it done and defeat number 4 Purdue if Purdue does jump over Vermont. So those are the games for Thursday. Obviously, I'll be back in the studio Friday recapping what happened on Thursday, talking upsets if there are any, as well as previewing the games on Friday. NCAA tournament's always fantastic. I cannot wait for it to start. Tomorrow is going to be definitely a very, very exciting time for myself and really the rest of the nation here in the United States. So we'll take our last break of the show. After the break, we're going to talk about Kevin Love returning back to the Cleveland Cavaliers lineup as early as next week, ahead of schedule after he went under for knee surgery. Talk about what that means for the Cleveland Cavaliers and really their playoff picture here at the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Thank you for returning back here to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. We got one more segment before we say goodbye. I'll be back in the studio on Friday, as I mentioned, talking all things college basketball. We're going to take up a lot of the show because of, obviously, the NCAA tournament. But we're switching gears, talking about the NBA here right before we leave. I mentioned the Cavaliers picked up a win last night, 128-96 over the Detroit Pistons. LeBron James with a triple-double in that game. And the news is getting better for Cleveland because it looks like, according to General Manager David Griffin, Kevin Love will be back on the upcoming road trip out to the West Coast next week. He's cleared for contact drills. Last night, he was on like a 3-on-3 workout prior to the game against Detroit. He's missed 13 games. As I mentioned, he went over for knee surgery about 4 weeks ago. It looked like the timetable was going to be a 6-week return, but if he's back next week, obviously he's ahead of schedule, 4.5 to 5 weeks. So a week's not much, but definitely ahead of schedule for a guy who's had his injury issues in the past like Kevin Love has. It's definitely a really, really good sign. The Cavs have a 2.5-game lead over the Celtics and a 3-game lead over the Wizards for the top seed in the Eastern Conference. And now they're looking at getting Kevin Love back. This is obviously big, big news and a very, very good thing for the Cavaliers because Kevin Love he's an all-star. I mean, there's really nothing else I can say about it. He's an all-star. He's definitely part of their big three. Big on rebounding as well. The Cavs have really missed Kevin Love's rebounding since he's been out. They did bring in Larry Sanders, as I mentioned, on Monday, but he is still trying to work his way into the team. He only played a couple of minutes last night. He's going to go down to the D League so he can get his shape back up and get them ready to try and fill that void that they hoped Andrew Bogut would have. That rim protector, a guy who can play some defense, get some rebounds, really clog the paint. That's what Sanders is going to try and do. But getting Kevin Love back is really huge for the Cavaliers because of everything he contributes with the three ball, on offense, and even the rebounding. Cavaliers, I mean, they've been going through a little bit of struggles lately. I mean, it hasn't been necessarily perfect for them since Kevin Love's gone out, but they're getting healthy at the right time is what I'll say. They got J.R. Smith back last week, going to get Kevin Love back next week. They still have, like 16 games left in the regular season. So that's enough time to get both these guys back up to speed and get them in the rotation and kind of get the rhythm back going for the playoffs. Right now they're looking at maybe facing the Bucks. The Bulls and the Heat are only a half game out of that 8th seed in the West. Then you have Detroit there, who's only a half game ahead of Milwaukee. So you're looking at maybe Detroit, Milwaukee, Chicago, or Miami if the Cavs... when the Cavs get into the playoffs, obviously. They haven't clinched yet, but they're, of course, going to. So that's what they're going to be looking at. And getting Kevin Love back is really, really big. As far as what I would do with Love, it doesn't look like the Cavs are going to do this, but I would maybe sit him down a little longer. He's going to return next week, which is obviously fantastic news. And the Cavs could really use him. They're 4-6 in the last 10 games. But I would definitely take it a little easy with Kevin Love, given his injury issues. Remember, he got injured in the playoffs. He had his shoulder come out of his socket there when he went up against Kelly Olynyk in the first round of the Eastern playoffs a couple years ago. And I would maybe take it a little easy with him given his injury issues. There's really no need to rush him in. At worst, you're looking at the number 3 seed if they do drop 3 games between now and the rest of the season to Washington. So at worst, looking at the 3 seed right now, you'd be facing the Pacers, that 3-6 matchup. Indiana obviously have Paul George, but they're nothing compared to Cleveland. So I'd maybe take it easy with Kevin Love, get him a little up to speed, maybe the last 5-6 games of this season. You have J.R. Smith trying to work his way in as well, because you don't want to rush Kevin Love, especially with a knee injury. Knee injuries are the toughest to overcome. So if you don't rush it, then you get him ready for the postseason. That's all that matters, because simply put, the Cavs are going to do it. LeBron's been there 6 years in a row now to the NBA Finals. I really don't see how he doesn't get there for a 7th straight year, although Boston and Washington I do like. LeBron James is simply the best player in the world, and he simply just turns it up another level in the playoffs. You always have Kyrie Irving as well. Tristan Thompson's a good force down low, and then you have the shooters all around him. Kevin Love, J.R. Smith, Kyle Korver. Darren Williams has been a good addition, even Derek Williams as well. So Cleveland's going to get there again unless something really, really happens to Kyrie or even LeBron James. So I'd maybe take it easy with Kevin Love a little bit. You don't want to rush it too much. But it's definitely really, really good news that he's going to be returning as early as next week, ahead of schedule. The Warriors are going through some struggles. You don't know what's going to happen with LaMarcus Aldridge and his heart with the Spurs. So the Cavaliers are definitely getting healthy at the right time and are looking like they're in the best situation for that playoff run. All right, guys, that's going to end the show for today. My name is Ben Brown. I'd like to thank you once again for listening. I'll be back in the studio Friday talking a lot of college basketball. As I've mentioned, I'm so excited for the NCAA tournament. But nevertheless, we are going to talk some NBA as well, top storylines and some games. So thanks for listening, guys, and I will see you then. Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.